And it is time now for our Alaska News for Wednesday, November 23rd, 2016. And we've got quite a bit of news to get to today, so let's just jump right in. When Caitlin Sweeney woke up just before 7 a.m. on November 16th to the sound of footsteps downstairs in her two-story Southport home, she knew something was wrong. She knew that somebody was inside the house, and she looked outside for a vehicle, but there was none. But she could see that her vehicle was open. The home's garage door was also open. Because the house was being remodeled, Sweeney said the closest weapon at hand on the second floor was a crowbar, which she then picked up. The home security alarm then began to sound during the break-in. She called 911, ran down the stairs, and yelled for whoever it was to get out of her house. She then heard footsteps and the garage door close. On the advice of an Anchorage Police Department dispatcher, Sweeney then locked herself in a bathroom and waited for police to respond. Officers arrived within minutes from another nearby burglary call. That call came in at about 6:30 that morning. The homeowner had told police that he was drinking coffee when he heard his garage door opening. He grabbed his laser-sighted firearm, went to check out, and found his garage door completely open. There was a dark-colored Toyota truck parked in his driveway that was running. He said he pointed his laser from the gun toward the truck as it sped away. In both incidents, garage door openers taken from vehicles outside were used to gain access to the homes. Police also received another report at 8:20 that same morning that another vehicle had been spotted that was related to the one in the first incident. When police tried to stop it at the Holiday gas station on Huffman, the truck was driven away headed east, and another officer noted that it had been fitted with a stolen license plate. Now, at this point, they did get some suspects, two white men in their late 20s wearing dark clothes. It's not sure whether the truck that was stolen was the same one that was used in Wednesday's burglaries. The string of incidents has prompted police to ask residents to keep some home security tips in mind this winter, such as not leaving unattended and unlocked vehicles idling outdoors to warm them up. In January of this year, police said more than a dozen Anchorage vehicles were stolen in a period of 24 hours, and a majority of those were taken when they were idling. It's becoming more prevalent practice, apparently, in Anchorage. Switching to smartphone-based garage door controls and adding floodlights to the home is also a good idea. It looks like the drill, baby drill mantra has begun again, as the controversy for drilling in the Atlantic has been reignited by the election of Donald Trump. Environmentalists and coastal businesses say it could be the first major fault line that divides them from the new president. The Obama administration has moved to restrict offshore oil drilling leases in the Atlantic as well as off the coast of Alaska, but President-elect Trump says he intends to use all available fuel reserves for energy self-sufficiency. Environmentalist groups such as Oceana are digging in for the possibility that Trump's election will mean more drilling. The American Petroleum Institute says more aggressive drilling is needed. And last week, with the U.S. Department of Interior releasing its 5-year plan that halted two proposed Arctic offshore oil lease projects, there was an interview with the Alaska Superstation, with Alaska Oil and Gas Association President and CEO Kara Moriarty, who discussed Alaska's resource base and President-elect Donald Trump. And she said basically, quote, "Why wouldn't you want Alaska's resources?" Juneau police have arrested a man suspected of stealing several bank cards and using them at local stores. Willie, a.k.a. Billy Moy Jr., was arrested on November 15th on 4 outstanding JPD warrants. Apparently, a tip from a citizen had come in that Moy was in the area, and officers were able to make an arrest. The day before, JPD had warned business owners against accepting cards from Moy. He's believed to have used and attempted to use stolen cards at 10 Juneau businesses since November 1st. At least one of those was stolen from a car. Moy is also a person of interest in the attempted burglary of an Airport Boulevard storage unit in Juneau. The Anchorage School Board on Monday approved a $58.45 million bond package for voters to consider on next year's municipal ballot, pending approval by the Anchorage Assembly. The 4-3 vote followed an extended debate between the school board members over the bond package's price tag, given that Anchorage voters narrowly rejected a smaller $49.3 million school bond in the last municipal election. The state's financial situation has also not improved in the past year, and the legislature voted in 2015 to stop reimbursing new school bonds for 5 years. Board members proposed a series of amendments on Monday evening to cut projects and trim the total of the original $67.1 million bond package that had been proposed by the administration. That bond package would have paid for construction projects like 16 schools. All but one of those amendments failed in close votes. A majority of school board members ultimately agreed to cut fire suppression systems at 2 high schools from the bond package, as well as 7 projects to meet Federal Americans with Disabilities Act requirements, including adding and upgrading bathrooms. The school board president said the district would use its general funds to pay for those projects, totaling $8.65 million. The Anchorage School Board will have to take another vote on allocating those funds. She said those were such immediate needs that they could not be ignored. The final $58.45 million bond package would pay for projects at 9 locations, including new roofs at 7 schools and a new roof for the Student Nutrition Building in South Anchorage. It would also fund heat and ventilation replacements and seismic upgrades. For Anchorage residents, the school bond would equate to about $13 in annual property taxes per $100,000 of assessed property, and be about $45.50 for the average $355,000 home. The School District Office of Budget and Management said that the school district is continuing to pay off its debt, so the expected net increase is less, $1.25 per $100,000 of assessed property. The Anchorage Assembly must still approve the school bond package before it can appear on next April's ballot. And the bond package is likely to be introduced at the December 20th meeting, with a vote to be taking place on January the 10th. The ongoing labor dispute between the city of Fairbanks and its police department is headed to the Alaska Supreme Court. On Monday night at City Hall, the Fairbanks City Council voted 4-2 to appeal the Superior Court judge's ambiguous ruling on a police labor contract dispute that dates back to the fall of 2014. Only council members Valerie Therian and Jerry Norm voted against the appeal. It didn't take more than a few seconds for the result of the vote to settle over the council chambers, and the dispirited crowd left quickly. Police department employees and their family members, as well as members of the general public, had packed the council chambers to show their support. Many of those there asked the council to drop the appeal and fund the contract during the public commenting period. A couple of attendees spoke against the contract, including Victor Buberg, who said it's hard to feel bad about someone who comes into City Hall making $10,000 per month and crying about it. It was ultimately the cost of the contract and the dire consequences of funding it that swayed the council to vote in favor of the appeal. City Chief Financial Officer Carmen Randall gave a presentation on finances in which she said there is no way to fund the $2.3 million contract. Randall said that contrary to what some people may think, the city cannot use its permanent fund to fund the contract in question because the city appropriates its maximum allowable withdrawal from the permanent fund toward the city's capital fund. The council then discussed cutting positions at City Hall to fund the contract. At one point, Councilman David Prue suggested in a mocking tone that Therian write an ordinance in which 10 to 14 city employees are laid off so their salaries could be appropriated to fund the police contract. Councilman Jerry Cleworth said his big frustration with the labor dispute is the, quote, lack of communication between the city and the Public Safety Employees Union, which represents the police department. He recalled an offer the city made to the PSEA back in December of 2014. That offer was a 4% increase, and it was immediately rejected. Cleworth said communication has been almost non-existent between city officials and PSEA Executive Director Jake Metcalf since that offer was made. Councilwoman Joy Huntington suggested the council work to come up with an affordable Christmas bonus or other offer to show its support for the police department in the meantime, and Councilman Jerry Cleworth agreed that that was a good idea. Therian said that she would be drafting an ordinance to fund the police contract while the appeal moves forward. The Alaska Wildlife Conservation Center introduced 2 male wolves that will join their wolf pack, named Dyrus and Lothario. The wolves are hailed from the Zoological Wildlife Conservation Center in Oregon, which donated the wolves to AWCC. The male wolves will be joined by 2 female wolves, and they will be animal ambassadors for their species, educating the public about their wild counterparts. Dyrus is a white wolf and is classified as a Hudson Bay gray wolf with his ancestral roots tracing back to Ontario, Canada. He will remain in a white phase his entire life. Lothario is a black phase gray wolf with ancestral roots that tie him back to Alaska. The search continues for a missing 16-year-old near Butte, with the troopers asking for the public assistance of Palmer and Wasilla area residents. regarding David Grunwald's missing persons case. If any local residents own surveillance cameras, troopers are requesting that owners review their footage from November 13th at 6 p.m. through November 14th at 11 a.m. If footage reveals the whereabouts of either Grunwald or his dark blue Ford Bronco, anyone is asked to please contact state troopers. Meanwhile, planes have been looking for any sign of the 16-year-old from the air, and crews on the ground are continuing to search as well. The Palmer 16-year-old had dropped off his girlfriend and has not been seen since. And troopers are continuing to ask for any help because he was not dressed for the environment, wearing only a North Face jacket or pullover and jeans, and his mom said he was wearing slippers. The Bronco was found burned, and no body was inside it. But once again, any surveillance video that may show where that Bronco had been or the location of the 16-year-old is requested. A Homer man accused of the city's only previously unsolved murder appeared in Kenai Superior Court on Monday. 55-year-old Lee John Henry is charged in the 2013 death of Mark Matthews, who was 61 at the time, near the Poop Deck Trail in Homer. Henry was indicted by a grand jury on October 20th on 1 count of first-degree murder, 3 counts of second-degree murder, 1 count of manslaughter, and 1 count of first-degree robbery. Homer police arrested him for first-degree murder on October 19th after the department got a tip from an area resident, according to the Homer News. Henry appeared at the Kenai Courthouse on Monday for an omnibus hearing where his public defender told Kenai Superior Court Judge Charles Huguelet that Henry's defense does not have discovery yet. The Kenai District Attorney told the court that the state had just sent initial discovery over the defense on Monday after working on it earlier in the day. It's in the nature of several thousand pages. Henry agreed to waive the speedy trial, and Huguelet set his trial for the week of January 27th. His next omnibus hearing is set for December 12th. Murder in the first and second degree is an unclassified felony. First-degree murder is punishable by up to 99 years in prison and a fine of up to $500,000. Manslaughter and first-degree robbery are Class A felonies, punishable by up to 20 years in prison and a fine of up to $250,000. There was an outage for GCI across the Anchorage Bowl on Tuesday, with an outage that began at 5:22 in the morning. Nearly 4 hours later, all services were restored, according to an announcement from GCI around 9:17 a.m. Apparently, the outage was the result of a bad card, which serves as the brains of the network. Upon switching out the card, the system took time to reboot. While the company's Facebook page stated that the outage was a statewide issue, they did say that the outage was intermittent, primarily affecting 3G services along the road system, and to some degree it affected users' internet in the home. A 37-year-old Anchorage jail inmate died Monday after he was found unresponsive in his cell from an apparent suicide attempt several days earlier, according to a statement from the Alaska Department of Corrections. Correctional officers at the Anchorage Correctional Complex found Christopher Ruhr unresponsive at his cell at 1:45 on Friday afternoon. He was in the jail's medical segregation unit. Officers and staff began life-saving measures on Ruhr, including CPR. Anchorage EMS arrived at the jail and took Ruhr to regional hospital at 2 p.m. on Friday. He was pronounced dead at the hospital 3 days later, around 3:36 Monday afternoon. They didn't have immediate information as to why Ruhr was in the jail's medical segregation unit, according to medical privacy laws. They also did not provide any additional details of the, quote, apparent suicide attempt. The troopers and the medical examiner's office review every inmate death, and the Department of Corrections Professional Conduct Unit will also conduct an internal investigation. Ruhr was only at the Anchorage jail for 3 days before he was found unresponsive. He'd been remanded on November 15th on federal conspiracy drug charges. The deputy commissioner said that the medical segregation unit is a place where sick or injured inmates can be monitored by medical staff, and they are typically checked out about every 30 minutes. Although in the medical units, those checks could take place even more often. Ruhr's death is the 10th in-custody death for 2016. A stolen sword returned to its owner is now headed to the auction block. Anchorage store Bosco's Comics, Cards, and Games said the Japanese katana's theft made headlines across the nation after its security camera captured a person dressed as a ninja stealing it on November 11th. A man later bought the sword on the street for $50, but returned it to the store when he realized it was stolen. Bosco's will now sell the katana on eBay starting on Black Friday, with all of the proceeds going toward Victims for Justice, which provides support to victims of violent crime. The manager of the Bosco's Spenard location said he and the owner came up with the idea on Monday and decided because the story gained so much attention, they wanted to open the sale to anyone who wanted to participate. The katana normally retails for $44.99. They haven't yet decided the starting price for the auction. While Anchorage doesn't have much snow, the staff of Alyeska Resort in Goodwood say that the ski area will have plenty in time for their traditional Thanksgiving Day opener. Skiers, however, won't have many other options when it comes to where they'll be allowed to ride. Alyeska Resort plans only to have 2 runs opening day. The run down from the top of Ted's Express to the base of Ted's Express, and they'll also be able to take a run on the Bear Cub quad. For now, man-made snow is about the only option around the south central area for boarders and skiers, with snow guns operating all across Hilltop in South Anchorage and other places at the tune of 40,000 gallons an hour. That is a lot of snow. It does need to be 22 degrees or colder for the fake snow, as otherwise they're just pumping water. So this soft opening at Alyeska is pretty much about the best that can be done for a Thanksgiving Day ski in the Anchorage area. In North Pole, a man is facing several felonies for reportedly holding a woman captive for 3 days, breaking her nose, and attempting to rape her. The 46-year-old is charged with kidnapping, 2 counts of second-degree assault, 1 count of first-degree attempted sexual assault, third-degree assault, and interfering with a domestic violence report. All but the interfering charges are felonies. According to the criminal complaint, troopers responded to our Nordale Road home after they received a call at about 4 a.m. on Sunday from a crying woman who said that he had, quote, beat the expletive out of me. The woman gave brief landmark directions to the home, and the call disconnected abruptly as if the phone had been taken from her. Troopers found the home, and as they approached the trailer, they could hear a woman screaming and crying. Troopers kicked the door down and entered the trailer as the woman continued to cry and scream for help. The man and the woman were in a bedroom at the back of the trailer. The woman was sitting on a bed against the wall, naked, with 2 black eyes, multiple bruises and scratches on her arms, and a swollen, bloody nose. The man was sitting on the bed, looking at troopers, quote, angrily, according to the complaint. He was detained, and an ambulance was called for the woman. There are more details on the graphic nature of the assault in the News Miner. Juneau House District 34 Representative-elect Justin Parrish has a firm idea of what a fiscal plan for the state should look like. He outlined the plan as he sees it while a guest on Action Line on KINY Radio on Friday. He said it almost certainly will include a broad base tax. He thinks other options rather than just income tax, although he does think an income tax is better than a sales tax. He said it will also include a restructuring of the permanent fund. Regrettable, he said, but it's a necessary part of the solution. Also, Paris had this reaction to the Superior Court ruling upholding Governor Walker's veto of half the money for this year's permanent fund dividend. Quote, I think there's an important legal question to be resolved, and both sides made good arguments. Now we'll head to the Supreme Court and see what happens, unquote. The Great Alaska Shootout turns 39 this week, and some of the pregame talk is whether Anchorage's annual college basketball tournament will live to see 40. Drastically reduced support from the state is forcing severe budget cuts at the University of Alaska, and UAA's pet event is not immune to the impact. UAA's athletic program is under orders to cut $1.9 million from its $10.3 million budget by next school year, and the Shootout is already in the process of downsizing. The tournament has faced cuts in each of the last 2 years, going from a budget of more than $1 million in 2014 to a budget of $753,000 this year. So far, the reductions aren't obvious to fans, although boosters and sponsors are likely to miss the luncheon at which all 8 of the men's coaches spoke. Both the luncheon and the banquet for the 4 women's teams were cut this year. But more noticeable changes are coming. The configuration of the tournament will change next year, maybe by going to 4 days instead of 5. They said they do want to bring everything they can to bring life to the tournament. So, with that in mind, get ready for a bucking salmon, shooting contests with 4 new trucks as the grand prizes, shuttle buses between downtown and the Alaska Airlines Center, an airline ticket giveaway, beer gardens, burrito bars, smoothie bars, and spin moves from UA guard Suki Wiggs, DJ Spencer Lee, and a huge foam boom called The Meltdown. And yes, there will also be basketball. Of course, last year was known for the record shootout scoring of 99 points, which broke the previous record of 97 that had been set in 1998. So once again, the shootout is downsizing. Fewer teams have been coming. It also has been paying far less than other tournaments that the big schools might come to. The biggest names this year are going to be the two women among the best to play in the game and a man who spent several years coaching in the NBA on the sidelines. Cynthia Cooper-Dyke, the USC head coach, is a two-time Olympic medalist, a two-time NCAA champion, and a four-time WNBA champion. Jackie Stiles is the Missouri State assistant coach, the all-time leading scorer in Division I women's basketball, with 3,393 points. And Eric Musselman, Nevada's head coach, coached in the NBA from 1998 to 2007, a stretch that included 2 seasons as the head coach of the Golden State Warriors and 1 season as the head coach of the Sacramento Kings. Now, with a strong partnership with GCI, the Shootout's title sponsor, that's what's making the tournament possible at all right now. GCI is in the 3rd year of a 5-year sponsorship deal that includes cash and in-kind donations, details of which have not been disclosed. They've also teamed up with BAC Transportation, Humpies, and Williwa to provide a hourly shuttle service between downtown and the Alaska Airlines Center. And of course, with the DJ playing courtside at several different games, the auxiliary gym is also going to provide all kinds of diversions beginning Wednesday, a beer garden, a prime rib carving station, a mechanical bucking salmon, and the duck and dodge challenge of a rotating foam boom called The Meltdown. GCI will be broadcasting a lot of the games. The arena that they're in this year is smaller. They left the Sullivan Arena and moved into the Alaska Airlines Center in 2014. Well, the arena being smaller, the bleachers are closer to the court, so a crowd of 2,500 actually feels significantly bigger than it does at the Sullivan. And most folks are saying that it is perfect for the tournament at this point. And once again, this may be the last year at 39 that we see the Great Alaska Shootout. Heidelberg Mayor Anthony Christensen has been named chairman of the Federal Subsistence Board. The appointment was announced Tuesday by Interior Secretary Sally Jewell in a news release. Christensen's a lifelong Alaskan who was named in October as the interim chair of the board, which oversees fish and wildlife management resources on federal lands and waters in Alaska for subsistence activities. Christensen was initially appointed to the board in 2012 as one of 2 public members. Tim Tarawak, the previous board chair, served 5 years before stepping down in September. So the mayor of Heidelberg is now the chairman of the Federal Subsistence Board in Alaska. Global ratings agency Standard & Poor's earlier this month revised its general obligation bond outlook for the municipality of Anchorage from negative to stable due to the recent, quote, positive budgetary performance. The agency also affirmed the municipality's AAA rating for its existing general obligation bonds. The stable outlook incorporates the view of expected stability within the local economy, despite the state's fiscal health. Anchorage Mayor Ethan Berkowitz and CFO Robert Harris issued a press release on Tuesday in reacting to the revised outlook, saying that it reflects the, quote, fiscal strength and resiliency. Anchorage is a great investment, and we are pleased S&P agrees, unquote. Now, Standard & Poor's had lowered Anchorage's general bond outlook to negative back in October of 2015, following what the agency called a trend of weakening available reserves in the context of what we view as limited direct revenue effects to date from a recent fall in oil prices, unquote. Holiday decorating is underway in Juneau, and the fire chief there had some safety tips. Make sure you have good working lights. LED lights, of course, are great. Look out for frayed wires and don't drive staples through the walls. Certainly not through the wires in the walls. You don't want to plug too many things into one outlet. Spread your electrical load. Keep combustibles away from heating sources. Chief says that seems to be one of the more common causes of fire this season. Make sure live tree needles are not falling off. Keep those trees watered. The chief says his entire career he's heard of Christmas tree fires, but during that time he's been to only 2. He says that they're seeing more and more artificial trees. He also mentioned how The Deputy Fire Marshal, Sven Pearson, talked about his grandparents putting live lit candles into their trees for decoration. And she said, quote, "I wouldn't be able to sleep knowing that was there." The Tanana Valley State Fair is looking for a new manager after the current fair manager, Joyce Whitehorn, made known her intention to step down from the position. Whitehorn has worked with the fair for a long time and took the fair manager position with the intention of filling that position temporarily. Whitehorn does plan to work with the fair in some capacity after a new fair manager is hired. They are looking for someone right now that they're hoping will be a long-term hire. For many Alaskans, Thanksgiving dinner is less about the food on the table and more about the friends and family members gathered around it. But for some struggling Anchorage families, putting together a full Turkey Day meal with all the fixings can be difficult. And Moose Lodge donated dozens of boxes of food with frozen turkeys, gallons of milk, and pumpkin pie on this week for a number of needy families at some elementary schools in the Anchorage area. The first marijuana store in Kenai has opened its doors, Red Run Cannabis. How long those doors will stay open will depend on whether supply can keep up with demand. There are several other facilities that are ramping up right now. And the doors at Red Run Cannabis opened at noon on Monday to a steady stream of customers that lasted all day. In the back, Red Run Cannabis is cultivating their own brand of marijuana. Right now, 12 strains are in the early stage of development. They should be ready for harvest and sale in mid-January. Red Run Cannabis will be closed this Thursday for Thanksgiving, but otherwise they said they will be open until supplies last. Kenai now joins Valdez and Fairbanks on the list of Alaskan cities where you can legally purchase marijuana at a retail store. Arctic Herbery owner Bryant Thorpe will not have to defend himself against state accusations that he unlawfully gave out free marijuana samples at his Anchorage cannabis shop, but he must still make his case to local officials next week in order to open his doors. In a meeting last Thursday, Alcohol and Marijuana Control Office Executive Director Cynthia Franklin said she and her staff had reviewed the incident and decided not to pursue action against Thorpe. Basically, they don't have much evidence of the giveaway other than what Mr. Thorpe admitted. He was given 2 notices of violation by the Control Office after an October 21st report on KTOU-TV that he'd been giving away free samples at the shop. He did admit to giving away free samples, which is not permitted under state and local rules. He responded that he never intended to and that the incident was misunderstood. Franklin told the State Marijuana Control Board that Thorpe had said he had given pre-rolled joints away to friends and crew who had helped him on his business during a soft opening. He gave the cannabis away in order to get the marijuana off the premises before his final state and city inspections. Now, they could have chosen to file an accusation against him, but the state is not moving forward on that. They also sought to clarify the state's position that he became a licensed business owner when the state approved his license, despite not receiving the final go-ahead from city and state inspectors. Meanwhile, Thorpe called the media reports misleading at best, saying that the whole thing has been misconstrued. Next week, however, he'll have to defend himself against the Anchorage Assembly, which halted his license until the issue is resolved. Right now, one of the Assembly members, in fact, the Vice Chair, Dick Cheney, is threatening to pull his license. He also said that they could just say it's not a problem, but they aren't sure what's going to happen on Tuesday. In the meantime, Cheney says he plans to advocate halting Thorpe's license for the time being. The Legislative Information Office in downtown Anchorage opened earlier this fall. The Alaska legislature has rejected a $37 million damage claim by the former landlords of the older office space. And now the Legislative Council voted unanimously at a Monday afternoon meeting to uphold a prior decision dismissing the claim. This dispute over the legislature's Anchorage offices could end up in court. Lawmakers last month moved from the old building into the new Anchorage offices in Spenard, which they bought after a Superior Court judge ruled that the no-bid lease for the downtown building was illegal and invalid. If you are looking for a good minivan, you might not want to buy a Toyota Sienna, as Toyota is now recalling 834,000 of them in North America because the sliding doors could open while the vehicle is moving. And if you're looking for a place to go for a Thanksgiving meal tomorrow, 2 local churches and other organizations, including one restaurant, are sharing the harvest. Free holiday meals this year include Immaculate Conception Church, University Community Presbyterian Church, as well as Unity Outreach Services, Chino Lakes Badger Road Church, and Bobby's Downtown Endstone Soup Cafe, also at Fairbanks Rescue Mission. That's our Alaska News for the day before Thanksgiving. It is Wednesday, the 23rd of November 2016. And weather-wise today, we are looking at a chilly but certainly not as cold as it could be kind of a day. Mostly clear with a high around 2 below. Tonight we're looking at a low around minus 15 to minus 20. And tomorrow for Thanksgiving Day, mostly cloudy in the morning, becoming partly cloudy with a high around minus 6. And in just a few moments, I will come back with another bit of a podcast for you with a commentary for today. Make sure you check it out. All of the resources that I used, all of the references, all of the websites for today's newscast are found on my website if you go to radiofreespeech.com, and you'll be able to get all of those references for yourself. Thank you, and we'll be back in just a moment with the commentary.